So is Steve the only one we're still missing? Okay. Okay, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order and get started. So welcome everyone. Thank you for being here and for participating in this task force. We're still missing one member. Oh, he just joined. Okay, so we have everybody. That's great. And we're going to go through introductions in a little bit, but just wanted to start by saying welcome to all of you. Thank you for agreeing to be part of this and taking part in this important work, and your willingness to contribute your efforts to this undertaking. This is an initiative of the Marion City Council, and I'm grateful to the council for endorsing this and for initiating this process. I think that a lot of good will come out of this. We're all really looking forward to the outcome. You've all heard me say, I think at some point or another, that there should only be one side to these issues. We are all on the same team. We're all on the same side. I think we all want to have the results be a community that is welcoming to all, where all people have opportunities and where all people feel safe and welcome. And we want this work to be fruitful. My hope is that this group will work together in that spirit. My hope is that we all trust in each other's intentions and are willing to work together for the good of the community. So with that, I think we're going to do some introductions. We're going to introduce each other or ourselves to each other. And what I would ask is that you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and why you're here and what you hope to accomplish. Okay? So I can start if you'd like. I'm Nick Abouassili, and I moved to Marion. My family immigrated to Marion in 1975 and grew up in this community. I feel very passionately about this community. I love Marion. I think it's a wonderful community, and I want to see it be its best. I grew up here, went to the University of Iowa, and then worked in Texas for a couple of years, but decided that this is where I wanted to put my energy and my efforts, and came back and have been very blessed to have many opportunities to make an impact and make a difference here, and work with a lot of wonderful people who also love Marion and are helping to move it forward. I'm here because as a resident of Marion, as a father in Marion, as a community volunteer and leader and community servant, I have an interest in making sure that Marion is successful and that Marion is, as I said, a place where all people have the same opportunities to enjoy a good quality of life and to achieve their goals, where people can live free from fear and free of discrimination and bias. I think, all communities can do better, including Marion, and looking forward to seeing how we can improve and how we can move Marion forward. I think that's probably enough for me at this time, but I'll just add that, as an immigrant, I think that diversity is an asset and that diversity should be celebrated, and diversity is a strength for our community, and would like to see us celebrate diversity and help everyone see that the benefit and the strength of diversity in our community. So, okay, Carlos, would you like to go next?
Absolutely. Is this on?
Just push the button there. Push that button right there. There you go. Yep.
There we go. All right. Can everyone hear me? Okay, perfect. All right. I'll make sure I stand back. My name is Carlos Nelson. I am a resident of Marion. Myself and my family, we moved to Marion about 2013. We have been in Cedar Rapids School District for probably 13 years before that, I believe, from 2001 to 2013. Yeah. Originally from Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm a Southern man. So my values are going to be slightly different than here in the Midwest, and they've always stuck with me. So I have 3 sons, married for 23 years. Oldest son is 27, middle one is 24, youngest one is 20, and he's a sophomore at Granby University in Des Moines, plays basketball and studying sports management. So for me right now, I'm a longtime coach, basketball coach, kind of in multiple sports, but basketball is my main dig. Right now, I presently work at the University of Iowa as a academic coach in the Center for Diversity and Enrichment. So I'm around kind of social justice issues and underrepresented students on the normal. My passion for wanting to be in this position is kind of piggybacking off what Mayor Nick said, is just seeing everyone be successful and thrive in a community where differences should be welcomed and not looked upon as a bad thing. I'm sure many of you've probably heard this, but if everyone was the same, nobody would be different. We'd all have the same thing. Everybody would have the same color on, the same color car, same color house. That's boring and tacky and lifeless. So I think diversity is just all about representing life, community, and community is what you make it. So that being said, me being from the South, I've been around a lot more diversity than here in Iowa. I've also lived portion of my life out in California, where there's a lot more diversity than even Georgia. So I've got multiple backgrounds in what diversity, equity, and inclusiveness looks like. I'm also a former Marine, so even more diversity in my background. So I love to see the differences that people bring to the table, because everyone has a voice, everyone has a different voice, and we just need to welcome that. So I think I touched on everything, right? I hope so.
Colette?
Hello, my name is Colette Atkins, and I'm currently on City Council. I also happen to work at Kirkwood Community College. Moved to Marion about 13 years ago and have fallen in love with the community. I think, the primary reason why I do this work and why I have selected the things that I've chosen to give my time to over the last several years is being a woman and a mother. It's important for me to find ways to make the communities that I'm involved in a better place for everyone. So this idea of inclusion and equity and finding ways at a systematic level to really make change. So
Thank you. Mel?
And I'm Amal here. I live in Marion. I work for the city and I'm the civil rights liaison. Fairness is a value I hold dear to my heart, and my goal is to see Marion a more welcoming and inclusive society.
Anna?
Hello, my name is Anna Clymer. I have lived in Marion for over 17 years now and have 2 children in the Linn-Mar School District. Happily married. I don't know if that matters, but as sitting here today, I also represent Janessa Carr, who is one of our lead chairs for the Marion Alliance for Racial Equity, as well as the rest of the Marion Alliance for Racial Equity. I myself identify as Salvadoran. I am also an immigrant, born in El Salvador and blessed through adoption. Grew up in Benton County for most of my life, but have lived mostly in Linn County. And appreciate the opportunity to be part of these discussions where we can think about how we look and act in a way that is more welcoming and inclusive, especially with very diverse nieces, nephews, and relatives that I want to welcome into our community, whether they live here, work here, or just come and visit. So thank you for letting me join.
Thanks, Anna. Al?
My name is Al Rowe, and I'm been a member of this community for about 40 years. And I recently retired after 50 years in education. And I've spent a lot of time around here. And the one thing I'm most grateful for is basically not moving. I've been able to sit in a spot in a region of the state of Iowa, and I've got to watch and observe the evolution of people and how people evolve in all different ways, sizes, and shapes at any age. I've seen mountains get removed, families formed. There's so many stories of watching future mayors run for student council. Remember that back in Linmar days. I think that person's in the room. But the whole notion of developmental diversity is kind of anchors me. And I just see, like, right now in this moment, we all have a moment to grow and become who we choose to be. And that happens all day long. And that equity and diversity and inclusion are really a whole process of well-being, of just living as a whole healthy person. And I think what we know now about science and the like of the things that go with stress and anxiety, we all have implicit something going on, and we can best most clearly identify it by who we connect with. And so I'm excited about joining this initiative, and I look forward to frankness and honesty, but all the time rising to the point of a deeper connection with one another in regard to what we can be. This community is a growth community. We see it in infrastructure, but I think we can also see it grow in the inner world of ourselves. And so I look forward to this. I never thought that I would ever be sitting in this space. When I got off the train coming from Omaha to Marion, I got off the train across the street or nearby and went down to a place called Coe College, a place I'd never heard of, and went to school there. And to end up a few years later in this moment is kind of always, when I step in this space, I think, boy, a lot can really open up when you're not paying attention, because I wasn't paying much attention. I just came this way. But thank you, and I look forward to interacting and working with each one of you.
Thanks, Al. Mike.
Yes, my name is, can you guys hear me? Okay, my name is Mike Darrell, and I'm formerly from Flint, Michigan. I was born and raised in Flint, Michigan. We moved here around 4, maybe 5 years, going into 5 years ago. And we were coming from out the water crisis, and I have actually 3 children. I got two boys, and then I have custody of my niece as well. So we were looking to get out of the water crisis. I don't know if anyone's familiar with what was going on with the water crisis, but during this time I also was an owner and still is an owner in professional sports. I became the youngest African American to own a sports franchise at the age of 26. And that's where my background comes from, in sports management, marketing, as well as ownership. And I've been able to open a couple of training facilities in different countries, as well as Uzbekistan, Afghanistan. And I began to develop business management with international athletes as well. And when I came over first I moved to Cedar Rapids. I came into this place and I saw opportunity. I was trying to get my kids in a better situation because of the water crisis and the situation we were in. I wanted them to be able to have an equal opportunity to succeed. So that allowed us to move over to Marion. And I've been here for 5 years and looking to stay. I really wanted to get involved in the community because it impacts my children and everyone else's children. And I believe we all believe in equal opportunity, and that's what led me here.
Thank you, Mike. Jennifer.
Okay, well, that was, I hate to follow that
Sorry.
So I'm Jennifer Tibbetts. I am a commissioner on the Marion Civil Rights Commission. I have lived in Marion for 20 years now, and raising my daughter here. She is now a freshman at Marion High School. So, I also I wear many different hats. I am also a board member of the CR Pride, and so work to bring awareness regarding the LGBTQIA community. And also I am the work that I do, I'm the director of women's services at Catherine McCauley Center, and I've spent the last 2 decades working on equity issues for the female population. A lot of my focus for the first half of those 2 decades was in juvenile justice, and that is still where I've got a soft spot in my heart. And so I do looking at equity issues for girls in the juvenile justice system, or young women in the juvenile justice system. And currently at Catherine McCauley Center, I work primarily with women that have that are working to restabilize their lives after complex trauma. So that usually includes homelessness as well. So I am very just appreciative to be here today. I think that anytime that a community can have discussions and learn and grow from each other is amazing. And I thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Jennifer. Chief?
I'm Mike Kitzmiller. I'm the police chief. I've been here just about a month, over 13 months or so. I came from the FBI. I spent 20 years in the FBI. I was the civil rights program coordinator for Iowa and Nebraska for the FBI for 6 or 8 years. Bounced around. My first office was here. And I kind of bounced around a little bit. I went to Iraq, I went to DC, and I went to Omaha, but I kept coming back to Cedar Rapids. So my kids graduated from Linn-Mar. This is home to them. And this is where we're going to be. And again, I think from my perspective, I'm here to listen and learn. We had some meetings at the police department in the past and to make adjustments as we can to make people feel more welcome here. Thanks.
Thanks, Chief. Lon?
So I'm Lon Pluckon. I'm the city manager of Marion. I moved here about 13 and a half years ago, just a hair ahead of that, March of 2007. I've been in city management now for 21 years and public service for 26, and have been working on equity and diversity issues pretty much that entire time, whether it's issues around affordable housing, whether it's issues around homelessness, whether it's issues around race and language. Been fairly active in it, but not out at the forefront of it, just kind of quietly working on those kinds of issues behind the scenes as they arise. And I'm really glad that we've gotten this effort kicked off. I mean, for me, these discussions are a long time coming. I can remember being at my first International City Managers Conference back in 2002, and the president of ICMA said sustainability is the issue of our age. And I think that was right at the time, but I think now diversity is the issue of our age. Equity is the issue of our age. It's something that is the future of our country. We know that there are people out there that don't like it or don't believe in what it brings to the table, but the sheer fact of the matter is the country is going to become more diverse, and the communities that are going to be successful in the future are the ones that embrace it and learn how to celebrate it rather than seeing it as an obstacle. And I'm glad that Marion's going to have this opportunity. I think with this group, we've got a lot of good people on here with varied backgrounds, and I'm looking forward to having the conversations, but also making lasting change and improvements to the community.
Thank you, Lon. So we have 3 people, 3 members of the task force who are on Zoom with us. Fred, are you ready to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Fred Brown. I am the vice chair of the Marion Civil Rights Commission. I lived in Cedar Rapids, Marion area for 10 years. I've been a resident of Marion for the last 7 years. One of my main focus, I work at Collins Aerospace, formerly known as Rockwell Collins. I am an engineer. I did a stint in human resources recently as an HR business partner, focusing in on diversity, equity, and inclusion for our business. So one of my main focus or passions that I have is just making sure that diversity of thought and inclusion of people is always welcomed in the community. I have 2 young children that are in the Echo Hills school, the Linn-Mar school district, but Echo Hill is the school that they attend. And I just want to make sure that all people feel welcomed in our community.
Thank you, Fred. Steve? Is Steve still with us?
Yep, I'm still here.
Hi,
Just
Steve.
had to come off mute. Steve Mosier. And I was the initial chair of the Marion Civil Rights Commission. Also chaired the Cedar Rapids Civil Rights Commission, and on a couple other groups, executive committee for the NAACP. So I've got a little bit of background, but I hope we're not going to be too naive to think that it's the city alone that's going to make changes in this community to let it be more inclusive, because the city only really impacts a certain segment. We also have to change the minds of some of the people that live in Marion, that if you're worried about being inclusive and welcoming, you've got to go a little deeper. The city can set the pace, you can set the table, but we've got to reach everybody in order to get this accomplished. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, and Maxwell.
Hey, Maxwell Grant, born and raised in Cedar Rapids, went off to college, University of Northern Colorado. I have to say, so I've been running a company called OHE Industries for almost 33 years now. And arguably OHE was one of the first minority-owned manufacturing concerns in Iowa, which was founded by my dad and Percy Harris, who happens to be my godfather. And so, I guess I should say I stand on the shoulders of a lot of guys who have done a lot for the community back in the day. I've sat on several boards, and have to admit that I have felt and looked for opportunities to sit on a board that is going to and look for the opportunities to accomplish what this task force is hoping to accomplish. So, so when I went to college, I had a lot of Omega Sci-Fi friends who, they debated, how do you live on a dorm with all white people? And my white friends would say, how do you have friends who are so racist? And, dealt with a lot of different things in that regard. And I just think now is the time to look for an opportunity to bring or try to bring people together in any way possible. And, Martin Luther King has a saying that says, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. So we can say we're for this and we're for that, and I've been trying to do this and I've been trying to do that, but if you don't attempt or don't get out there and make some effort, then there you are. So went to Washington High School, admittedly had a fairly privileged upbringing, and at the same time have worked, be able to walk with folks that are my employees, which are not from a especially privileged background, but are looking for job opportunities. So I feel I have an opportunity to add in a lot of different ways on the task force, and I'm looking forward to doing what I can and being a part of the task force. I'm very happy to be involved.
Thank you, Maxwell. Okay, did I miss anybody?
Hi, my name's Kirsten Fisher. Can you guys hear me? Kirsten Fisher, I'm the HR director for the city. I've been in human resources now for 26 years, 2 months have been in the public sector, so this is new to me. Obviously, working in human resources, diversity, inclusion has always been something that I'm passionate about in my professional career. I'm also a multiracial family, so it's on a personal note, it's very near and dear to my heart as well. I'm originally from Phoenix, Arizona, so much more diverse than, say, Iowa, for example, but definitely glad to be here. I've got 4 children. My husband deployed back to the Middle East last week. Thank you for your service, Carlos. And I am happy to help in any way that I can.
Thanks, Kirsten. Okay, I think we have a great group of people, and I'm just looking forward to everyone's contributions. So next on our agenda, does anyone have any questions at this point? Or okay. Next on our agenda, we're going to go through some organizational items. We'll start with Lon.
Thank you, Mayor. So I wanted to just kind of start setting the stage for how the task force can operate. I mean, for us largely as the first meeting, this is the organizational meeting where we start to figure out how are we going to operate, how often are we going to meet, how are we going to organize to do the work. But I think from the city standpoint, there's some critical things that we wanted to make sure that we can address. And Steve Mosier already hinted at it a little bit. Our concept for this group was to come up with work products for policy recommendations, procedure recommendations for areas that the city can affect. And we are fully prepared to dig into data for the city in the areas that we can. But the core thing that I wanted to impress is that I hope, because we're Marion, we always like to think we can maybe do things a little bit better than some of the other places can. So we want to make sure that we're using Marion solutions and that we're looking at the underlying issues that are specific to the city of Marion. You know, national issues may not be what's present here, so they may influence it, but let's figure out what's going on the ground in Marion and then what we can do to actively address it. But the key to that is that, you know, this is not, we're not in the business of creating commissions or task forces that are there to be task forces in name only. I mean, this is a working group and we're looking forward to having very specific items that we can take out as policy recommendations for things that we can actively do to make the situation better. So I've given everybody some background documentation. The city ethics policy is one that's pretty critical. So everybody please take a look at that, because we do ask all of our boards and commission members to review that, know what it states, and be able to sign that. As a lot of you know, we had a situation recently where we had a member that we felt like crossed the line on one of our boards and commissions and ultimately stepped down. So we take that very seriously, but it really defines how we expect our board and commission members to be able to operate. And the reason that we have that is because when you're a member of the board or commission for the city of Marion, personal beliefs, opinions can get conflated with the official position of the city. So while you're out there, I mean, once you put on that badge or you have that title behind it, it kind of adds the weight of local government behind it. And so we just ask that people always be mindful of that. We're never going to ask anybody to temper your personal opinions or anything like that. But if you're going to put it out there, just please say, this is my personal opinion and not a position of the official position of the city of Marion. That's what our social media policy stipulates, because we want people to certainly enjoy every ounce of free speech that they are entitled to, but just need to be mindful that because you're on this task force, that people may look at you as being an official representative of the city of Marion. There are some other pieces out there for you to take a look at as well. The open meetings law is always fun reading. These are, it's an official task force for the city of Marion, so these meetings do need to be open to the public. But one thing I would draw a distinction about that is that means that the public can observe the proceedings, the public can listen in. It doesn't always mean that every meeting is going to have a public input portion. So what we were looking at, especially with these types of issues, is that if people have something that they would want to raise, especially in the era of hybrid meetings with Zoom, we would ask that people submit them in writing through Zoom, and then we'll take a look at it. If it's something that needs to be addressed, we would just add it to a future agenda rather than trying to go back and forth and answer questions that are coming in through Zoom and everything constantly during the meetings. So with the open meetings law, there are some things that you need to be aware of. I mean, with a 13-member commission, if we have 7 or more members together, that constitutes a quorum. And so a group of 7 or more can't meet to conduct committee business without having it be properly noticed to the public. And that doesn't mean that if there's an event, if there's a pride event that everybody wants to attend, that you can't all go to that, because that type of an event is something that's open to the public. Anybody can be there, and as long as everybody doesn't gather together and start talking about task force business, you're just fine. That's how members of the city council and other boards and commissions can go to things like the chamber dinner, the Medco dinner, stuff like that. Those are not considered to be official city meetings. Where a lot of people will trip up on that is the reply all button on electronic communication. So sometimes you'll get something and it'll be like, oh, I have this idea that everybody should know about. And if you click reply all, you've just potentially committed an open meetings violation. Once you start to have an active discussion back and forth through electronic media, that can be considered a violation of the open meetings law. A reply all, that if just to say I can't come to a meeting, and nobody replies to it, generally you're fine. It's when you hit that next reply all and start actively engaging in a discussion back and forth that you can get yourselves in trouble. This group is large enough that when we, and here a little bit, when we start talking about protocols and how we want to operate, we have a lot of members. So if we wanted to organize, for example, around subcommittees to focus in on specific policy areas, as long as you're under that 7, if you've got 6, 3, 4, anything under a quorum, they can meet and have discussions, talk about issues, dig into issues, and then bring recommendations back to the committee of the whole, and that's perfectly fine. The other thing you have to be careful with is what they call walking quorums. So with a member of the commission, like if one member of this group were to go around, you see a policy that you like or don't like, if someone goes around and goes to every single member and then lobbies for that specific position to kind of stack the vote before it comes to the public and is voted on in public, that is considered to be also a violation of the open meetings law. So these are some of the little quirks that sometimes get new board and commission members tripped up. The reply all button is the one that I most frequently have had to step in and say, hey, wait a minute, time out, folks. This has to wait. We'll add it for a future agenda and discuss it in front of the public. So then the last thing I had under this section was to just talk about protocols. This is more getting into the nuts and bolts of how are we going to operate, meeting frequency, how are we going to organize work? Are we going to try to do things to the committee of the whole or do subcommittees and working subgroups? Realistically, like I said, we have enough people that if people have a topic that they're really passionate about, we can break into subcommittees and work on those. But this will tell us how to organize work and continue making progress between meetings. I think from the city standpoint, we were thinking at least initially, we'd probably go a month in between meetings of the greater task force. And then as work gets assigned, the subcommittees could meet in between, maybe bring reports back. But wanted to open that up for discussion amongst the groups. And then as we get into, really looking through recommendations and coming up with the more concrete actions that we're going to propose, maybe we do need to meet as a committee of the whole more frequently. But wanted to ensure that there was enough time between meetings for actual progress on some of these issues to happen as well. So with that, I would just open it up for discussion from the group to see if anybody has strong preferences on that or how it would be organized.
Does anyone have a question on anything that Lon discussed or on any of the organizational issues or matters? And the way we'll handle discussion, I think, is so that everyone gets a fair chance to speak and we have equal opportunities to talk, whether on this or any other issue that comes down the road. Please be recognized, and then that way I can make sure that everyone has their turn and no one's speaking over anyone or interrupting anyone, and that we all have the same opportunity to be heard. Okay. So does anyone have any questions or ideas or thoughts on Lon's items that he presented or any other organizational issues or matters? Anna?
I don't know if it would be here or further into like the ground rules, but just thinking about how we're equipped to prepare in advance of a meeting. If we get materials to review or data to review a week in advance or a few days in advance. I don't know if there's any protocols for that set yet.
That's a great question. Lon?
Yeah, normally we like to try to provide documents, especially if it's something that people are going to need a chance to read at least a week in advance. Yep.
Is that okay with everyone? Okay. Any other thoughts or questions?
I promise if we're going to give you 300 pages, we'll shoot for 2 weeks.
And, sometimes it's just the circumstances don't, if something comes up all of a sudden or whatever, it may not be exactly, 2 weeks or whatever, but we're going to certainly try to make sure everyone has ample opportunity to review review
Yeah.
materials.
Holidays and things like that can interfere with it sometimes. Yeah, deratios.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions on that, on organizational matters?
The only other thought I had is just as far as, and maybe we'll have to just do a poll of members on availability for timing about whether or not you prefer to have like meetings at 4 o'clock, what works better for the majority of the folks, 5:30, Wednesdays, Thursdays. We just need to kind of find that out so that we do have 22 other boards and commissions that we have to work around on some of those evenings to make it work.
Okay, so is that setting future meeting dates? Is that what you're talking about, or are we?
Yeah, I wanted to
we'll
cue
come
people
back
up.
to that, or do you want to talk about it now?
Now, for the next one, then we'll set future meeting date. That would just be for the very next meeting. And then
Okay.
I think we'll do some polling in between to see if we can find a standing time that works well for everybody.
Okay, good. And I assume everyone agrees it's important to have a standing time that we can just schedule into our calendars and work everything else around so that we know when it's going to be, right? Oh, Anna? Yes.
I was just wondering if we're not able to represent ourselves, can we ask for somebody to be here in our place or no?
If you were going to do that, the boards and commissions that can use proxies successfully designate 1 or 2 people who are just always the proxies. But then like in a case like this, we'd really want them to be listening to the discussion too, so that, you know, the first part of the meeting isn't them getting caught up. I mean, especially in your case with you representing the alliance, we know that sometimes that may happen. But if someone's going to come in and sit in for you for a meeting, we want them to be current on everything.
So would it be advisable then just for them to designate an alternate like right away so that we know who because that person has to be appointed too.
Yep, you'd want to appoint them as an alternate, and we'd want to add them to the distribution list for materials and agendas.
Would that be okay? Yeah. So if you could let us know who the alternate would be, and we'll put that on an agenda of the council to appoint that person as an official alternate. That work? Okay. Great. Anything else on that topic? Okay, moving on to number 4 on our agenda, which is a discussion on the ground rules. And I think this can involve everyone in terms of what you expect or what you recommend as ground rules. You know, for myself, you know, I would like to see all of us agree that we're going to make a priority to attend. You know, the work can't get done unless we're all engaged and willing to do our part, and that we come with an open mind and be willing to work in between meetings and to do our part. I would also ask for mutual respect for each other. That, you know, if we hear opinions that we don't agree with, that we maintain respect for people's opinions and not to become personal in our comments, you know, no, as far as disparaging remarks regarding individuals, but we can certainly criticize a position or a stance on a topic, but you know, try not to become personal in our comments. Again, we should respect everyone's opportunity to be heard and to have equal opportunity for input, and that the priorities of the group are set by the group, and that we engage in fact-based decision making. It's hard to, and I think Amal says it well, and she says you can't set policy based on anecdotal evidence. That we need facts as far as Marion goes. And in order to have lasting solutions to real issues, you know, we need to be operating based on what the facts are for Marion. That's what I have to to add to that for now, but Lon, do you have anything?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think what you just hit on is going to be really very important to the success of this task force, because, frankly, we're going to be talking about issues that might be very near and dear to people, not only ones in the task force, but other ones out there in the community. And some of them may be uncomfortable or challenging to someone's view of the community or how they view themselves. And that can be a very uncomfortable position. And, as soon as somebody starts to do this, sometimes you can lose that engagement as part of their audience. So we do want to try to the maximum extent that we can, make sure that we are working with data and quantifiable numbers. But I hope that everybody in the task force can agree that we are going to need this to be kind of a safe space where we can have open and honest and sometimes raw conversations with each other and be ready to hear things that we may not agree with. We have to be able to listen to gain that other person's perspective in order to make sure we're coming to a recommendation for the community. Now, the corollary of that is, as the mayor said, we don't want those discussions to get personal, because when I think about these kinds of issues, there's a difference between calling out something that might be part of of systemic racism versus calling someone a racist. I mean, what we're really after here is, yes, I mean, if someone's a racist, we need to point that out to them. But at the same time, what we're really after here is affecting the system that supports it and the system that creates it and perpetuates it. So that's what we have to address. And honestly, a personal attack would be a violation of the city ethics policy that you'll all have a chance to read. So the goal here really is to ensure that Marion is a welcoming and inclusive community for everyone. And the recommendations coming from this board are really going to help us get there. We do expect those solid recommendations on how we can create solid positive change in the community. And I think as long as we focus on that as our goal, we have to acknowledge that we're going to have maybe disagreements on the best way to get there, but we're all pulling towards that same future for Marion.
Okay, and on the ethics, excuse me 1 second. On the ethics policy, I believe that everyone who is on the committee through application has already signed the ethics policy. Everyone who's a council member or a Civil Rights Commission member has signed the ethics policy. So does that just leave I don't know, have you signed it? So we'll need the members of the alliance, as well as including the alternate, to also sign the ethics policy and deliver that to the city manager's office. Okay? Mike, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna speak on the fact that knowing that we all are gonna get into topics that are gonna get sensitive, that are gonna get, allow you to, have a little bit of emotional side to you, that we don't allow emotions to distract us from making the best decisions for everyone, not just how we may feel about a particular race or anything else, but what's better for all of us. And that's just my only thing. We don't make decisions based on emotion.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Colette.
Sure. These are all very helpful, so I appreciate the conversation. I think it'll be really important for us to stay focused on the task and to help each one of us stay on the task, right? Because as I was listening, as we become passionate and have those passionate conversations, I know for one, sometimes I can quickly get off task. So I'll be relying on all of you to keep us on task.
Fred, Maxwell, or Steve, do you have anything?
I don't. I think that the protocols of this task force should be similar to the other boards that I've sat on, and I think we all recognize that we are representatives of more than just ourselves, and words can have a tendency to get misconstrued if not used carefully, and there are always going to be those folks out there that are going to test you or ask you about what's going on in there, and I think it's just a matter of maintaining some positivity, and we're all in this together, so it's all good.
Thank you, Maxwell. Yes, go ahead, Al.
Yeah. What are the rules or ground rules as it relates to the media. Because obviously that broadcasts a different megaphone and a different perspective that sometimes is not representative of the tone, the tenor, the comment, or whatever. And I'm not talking about social media. I'm talking about somebody attends a meeting and they want a statement. Who speaks for this group perhaps is the more tighter way of asking the question.
Yeah, I think if there's recommendations from the group, I mean, if there's a group position taken on something, we probably would want to refer those honestly to the mayor or me, because we're official representatives of the city of Marion. So if the group is speaking on behalf of the city, it needs to come from a city staff member. Again, there may be areas where we just have to agree to disagree on certain issues, and we shouldn't shy away from that. As this is speaking as somebody who maybe has a little bit of a history with being taken out of context by the media. So I've been through that before, but that's part of being open and honest with each other and open and honest with the community.
I think that response is right on, because it creates a nice clarity between the council and this group, and that's important as well. And any other ancillary groups that have interest in this, which there probably will be many.
I think that was a great question that you brought up and needed to be addressed. So anyone else, any other ground rules, any thoughts or ideas on how we're going to conduct ourselves? Yeah, do you have another thought? Okay. Anyone else?
Do we, it's a silly question, but do we need to be made aware of any aggressors out there who may automatically seek out the members of this task force and attempt to get in the faces of these people? I mean, it's a off the cuff question, but not that I want those names, but I'm sure there's no concern there, but you never know. I mean, there may be the outliers, and I'm not expecting you to name people at this point, but I guess, is there any concern about some people being overly negative toward this task force?
I'll ask the chief to answer that.
Yeah, I don't think so. Not that we're aware of right now. We kind of keep our ear to the ground on stuff like that, and I'm not aware of anything right now. And certainly if it would just be a matter of notifying everybody, and we would take steps to handle that as quickly as we could.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions?
So we're going to maintain, my fiance she asked me, are you meeting face to face? And I said, well, I think so. Then the invitation for the Zoom came over. So is that something for the foreseeable future that will continue then, or what is the thought there?
Yeah, good question, Max. We've been operating the city on what we would consider our phase 2 protocols for COVID response, but with the level of activity in the community as of Monday, we would anticipate going back to phase 1. And in phase 1, we would be doing meetings electronically to the maximum extent that we can. So for the foreseeable future, that's the direction I think we're going to head. If we get a month from now and the numbers look a lot better, we can look at modifying those protocols again, but we just want to make sure we're clear. We don't want to put anybody on undue risk.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the circumstances necessitate that, and we all understand that. And from my perspective, it's always better to do these, especially this type of a task force, have meetings in person, and as soon as we're able to, I think we'll do that again. But for the health of everyone and safety of everyone, it just necessitates that we be online for the immediate future, at least. So yes, go ahead, Al.
So it would be discussed momentarily. What's the relationship between this group and the Civil Rights Commission? I think we all know perhaps, but maybe we should hear that as to get clarity there.
So the Civil Rights Commission is created by ordinance, and that ordinance really springs from the Civil Rights Code that the state of Iowa has. So they have a defined mission for things that they're supposed to address. In some cases, they act as an adjudicative body. So if someone brings in a complaint of discrimination against for a landlord who they say is discriminating against them because of their source of income, then those types of cases can go before the Civil Rights Commission. The ones that are named in the state code generally will go to the State Civil Rights Commission, but they also have done quite a bit in the community for awareness and public outreach about their programs and supporting other civil rights initiatives in the city of Marion. Depending on what we come out of this task force with, one of the possibilities is that, for example, that a recommendation may go to the city council to make a change to the Civil Rights Commission ordinance, that maybe collectively we would come up with a recommendation that this should be part of their mission as well. So I think they are certainly open to that, to taking a look at what's in there. But as of right now, they're defined by code. We're here to really examine policies. And I think the other area where this task force is uniquely positioned is, again, hearkening back to what Steve Mosier was talking about. The city has a piece of this, but the city is also uniquely positioned because of our partnerships with the private sector, Chamber of Commerce, Medco, but also partnerships with the school districts to be able to be that convener of community conversations. So if we have things that we would like to dig into more deeply that say maybe they're in the field of education, the city can play that convener role as well and hopefully have that broader community influence. So, we have the stuff that we can do as a direct service provider, but by virtue of our position, I think can have a broader influence on the community as well. And that's not really normally what the Civil Rights Commission would do.
That answer the question? Okay, anyone have any thoughts or questions on that, or is that clear? Okay. Good. Then moving on to item 5 on our agenda, report on pre-task force items accomplished. Is that the chief or Lon?
Yeah, I just thought it might be helpful for the group to kind of know what we've already worked on. I did ask Chief Kitzmiller to talk about some of the things that the police department has worked on and has accomplished, because, this is 6 months after really the social justice conversation vaulted back into the national consciousness. And so we've been working on some activities in the meantime and just wanted to kind of bring you up to date with what we've already accomplished.
Get your glasses fogged up. I cannot figure out how not to make that happen. It's driving me crazy. Anyway, I'm sorry. So right after the George Floyd murder, one of the first things I did, it was within the first few days, I went through our use of force policies. I wanted to make sure that we were good on paper. There was a lot of stuff in there that we had not trained and we weren't doing, like chokeholds and things like that, but I thought it was important after that to change that on paper and get it in there. We addressed chokeholds, we addressed things like sitting prisoners upright. Again, that was something that our guys just knew to do, but I thought it was important to get it into the policy. We changed up a little bit on shooting at moving vehicles. Kind of used a blueprint of some stuff that came out through DC and President Obama, the 8 Can't Wait initiatives, and kind of used that for a blueprint to make sure that we were hitting all those marks. Currently, they came out with an executive order here recently about mandated policies that have to be in place in order to qualify for DOJ grants. So I'm going back through. That's a little more extensive list, but I'm picking through those to make sure we can. That's all adjudicated or administered through ILEA, the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy. So I have to send a letter to them with copies of what we've got to show that we're in line with what they're looking for. The other piece, the mental health liaison piece. So back in February, roughly February or March, we started working with Foundation 2 on a permanent full-time law enforcement liaison person, crisis counselor, to be embedded within our department. Cedar Rapids, I kind of heard about it from them. They were ecstatic about what it had worked for them, and so we started that process. We kind of got sidetracked with the COVID when it hit. I say the COVID when it happened, and then the trade show and stuff. But we finally hammered that out. I don't know if it was 2 council meetings ago or so, we signed the contract with Foundation 2. They've advertised for the position. We're actually doing interviews with our officers and a couple of candidates that they have next week. The goal is to have that person on board January 1st. And so they would essentially go out on mental health calls at first with the officers, and then eventually morph over where we can send them out when they're comfortable to go out on calls like that themselves. Then we'll work to that goal. We're excited about it. The officers are excited about it. I think it's the good thing. It's the good thing to do for the community. It's something that we just do not have the capability of providing that level of service that they can with a trained counselor. So we're excited about that. We came up with the transparency dashboard. So I'll be honest, and I've done some presentations to the Civil Rights Commission, and we've had some folks over to the PD a couple of times to kind of go over some stats. Our records management system is very clunky. It's old, and it's not built for a department our size anymore. So we are actually working on updating that. So it takes a while to pull data out of our system. So we came up with the transparency dashboard. It was modeled after something that our GIS analyst found. I kind of rolled it out to the Civil Rights Commission meeting the other day. It's multi-page. It's going to have crime stats. It'll have arrest records and tickets by race and sex. I think we've got a residency piece in there. We're going to have a page that has all of our policies in it as far as use of force and things like that, so people don't question what we're doing. They can look at our policies. It will also have the demographics of the city as well as demographics of the police department. So Sunny's slowly cobbling that together and getting it out. Like I say, it's the slowdown on that is the time it takes to pull the data out. She literally has to write a software algorithm to pull that kind of data out of the software that we use. It's just wasn't ever intended for that. I think some of the statistics that I provided earlier, one of the shortcomings of even with traffic stops, excuse me, is unless we write a ticket, we don't have a way of tracking race and sex of the drivers. We give out warnings. We can track the number of warnings we give out, but there's no place within our computer-aided dispatch system or CAD to mark race or sex. So again, that's something with this new one. We had a briefing from a company that came out, and they had all that built in to their system. We're excited. There was some procurement issues that we were looking at that I think maybe we've got a way to speed that up a little bit. And then I just have to get Lon and the mayor to give me $500,000 and we'll make it happen. But not trying to put any pressure on you guys, but so we're working on that. Again, that will have a lot of capabilities for us where we can get in and pull different data sets up. We've tried to be responsive to the Civil Rights Commission when we put these statistics out there. They've asked for follow-up. I've tried to be responsive. Some of it I can't get, like the SRO stuff you guys had asked for. We just don't track the school resource officer statistics for arrest. I could go in and pull the officers' names up individually, but the officers, when they're not in school, like during the summer and spring break, they're back out on patrol. So that's going to kind of skew those numbers a little bit. So we're trying to work towards that. And that's kind of one of the things I want to get out of this group is what do people want to see so that we can kind of build that into our system and make it easier for everybody to see. We've got implicit bias training. The state came out with mandatory implicit bias training and de-escalation training. We had sent officers, I think everybody in the city went to implicit bias training
2018.
We'd had officers getting it in the academy. They came out with a new mandate through the ILEA, the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy. We were waiting for those approved courses to come out. They approved one that was a train the trainer. We sent 2 officers to it. We got into the first class. One of my things with the training piece and the de-escalation, we're working on getting somebody into that train the trainers. I don't want to have to rely on another department. So right now on the de-escalation training, we have to rely on another department or us to bring a trainer in and then set the course up and all that. And that takes time. So if I've got somebody on staff that can do it, I can push it out quicker and easier and more frequently than I can if I'm waiting on somebody else. So the implicit bias training is, I think it's a 6 or 8 hour block. The first iteration of that, we've got our basic skills first week of December. And so we'll roll out the first, I think it's 2 or 3 hour block of that. And then we'll do another annual training in the spring or early summer where we'll get the other half of that. And it's kind of an ongoing training for us. Like I say, the de-escalation, once we get somebody to that train the trainer, we can plop that in there as well. We've already got people that go. We've got, I think, 60-something% of the officers have been to some type of de-escalation training. But again, I'm a little selfish. I want somebody on my staff that can teach it. So, and again, the civil rights presentation, I think that's helped. It's helped me kind of hear what people's concerns are. We did have some meetings at the PD right after the murder of Mr. Floyd, and brought different people from the community in and heard concerns from them about what they would like to see and what numbers concern them and things like that. So again, I think that's everything we've done to date. And again, we're here to help and do what we can to kind of, if we have to change what we're doing or put people's minds at ease, either way, that's what we're going to do.
I would add also, we pushed the survey out to the community. We were trying to assess how the community feel about living in Marion. We asked about their experience in Marion, how they felt overall in terms of equity and inclusion, how welcome they feel in the community. We'll be sharing those results here with the task force through a future agenda item for discussion.
Okay. Any questions for Chief Gitzmiller or Amal?
I just had a follow-up
Yes.
question. This is Anna. In regards to the training and learning component of it, you said it's about a 6 to 8 hour block of training for officers. Is there a component of self-assessment, tracking, and reassessing if there's any changes in any concerning trends of key officers or positions, things like that?
Built into the training, built into that training piece.
In the training or the follow-up?
We've got the way I don't have the answer to that. I know we track use of force per officer that we monitor. The bias piece, I don't know the answer to that.
I think the other question was more for me in regards to the transparency piece you talked about for the outward facing dashboard. Some of the components won't be available for a while, but do you know when, like access to the policies and things like that will be posted, or are they up already?
I know Sunny's working on it, and I don't know if she gave us a time frame. I think she rolled it out. I think she shared it with the civil rights commissioners or gave them a link.
He's still working on a couple of items before it's ready for consumption.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, but on Anna's first question, will we be able to have that information at some point? I know you don't have the answer in front of you now, but
Yeah,
okay.
I'll check into that.
Okay. Any other questions for the chief on work that has taken place so far? Okay. The next item on our agenda is setting work priorities. Lon, what was your thought on what we do here?
Well, I wanted to hear from the group kind of collectively, what issues should we focus on first? I mean, we know, for example, that the Alliance has a well-defined set of policy issues that they would really like to dive into. But we also wanted to make sure that we hear from other folks in the community and other members of the task force about items that they think that we should be looking into as well. And then kind of start to set out, what does our work plan look like? Out of all the issues that we've got on the table, what should be our top priority? What one should we focus on first? And then start coming down through that. And also that's where we kind of get into the nuts and bolts about how the group can and should operate. Do we want to try to tackle 3 at once? Do we want to try to tackle 2 at once with subcommittees? That's really kind of, I didn't want to take the liberty to say this is the top priority for the community. I felt like that really needed to be a task force discussion about where we should go from here and what issue we should focus on first and how much we should try to take on at once.
Okay, floor is open.
Can I pick on Anna and Michael a little bit? I mean, from mayor's standpoint, I know you've got 6 items that you'd like to have addressed, but if you had to pick one, which one would be the top priority?
I think in kind of reflecting on what our alliance is focused in on with specific to what's having the most impact on our African-American community specifically and other community members that either commute through Marion, live in Marion, work in Marion, whatever it may be, is specifically to stop racial profiling in traffic stops and establishing some sort of a Marion Police Citizens Review Board with authority to analyze, look at data, and then make recommendations that are actionable. The second one really being with that welcoming and inclusive community, thinking about what that looks like in assessing key policies and practices in regards to reflective governance, businesses, homeownership, all of those pieces that are reflective of what our community can look like outward facing for those that don't see themselves currently reflected in the city. So anything to add, Mike? Sorry.
Okay, thanks for that. Anyone else? Go ahead, Jennifer.
So first, one of the things is that looking at how do we put into place a practice to when policies and procedures are being developed, that they are looked at through a racial and gender lens, and to make sure that there's not that the policies themselves aren't actually more detrimental. And the other thing would be, and this is more on like a personal level of being working to increase visibility of the diversity that's within our community, but doing it that there's also a feeling of safety. Not feeling unsafe in your community because you are speaking out on or a part of a community. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Like one thing I've talked to several of my employees. We have a diverse group here as well, and I always ask them, are you fearful of the police? Do you have some concerns about the police? Do you get stopped by the police? And most of the time, if not all the times, they say, no, I really haven't had any issues with the police in any way, shape, or form. But that's this group. I think there needs to be some understanding as to why there is that shadow that's over the station, that's over the department, and it just seems as though that's the officers should get out in the public a little bit more. They should be seen more often, not in their cars or not doing what they're supposed to be doing, but maybe doing something that is a little out of the box in some way, shape, or form. I don't know how that manifests itself, but smile more often. I mean, put yourself out there where you're in public in a more in a less authoritative manner and in a more community manner in some way, shape, or form. How that looks, I don't know, but just thinking out of the box, a little brainstorming.
Yeah, I would just
Yeah, go ahead, Al.
ask,
I'll come back
just
to
for
Colette.
clarity, and that would be, have we declared that we have community policing here? And I'm not after it as a solution per se, but I sense the presence of the Marion Police in all kinds of contexts. And I just wonder, has that occurred kind of organically, naturally, or is this a full-fledged initiative already as an entry point into any other ideas that we might kick around?
we've got community policing activities on the department. I mean, we've got initiatives, I guess, for lack of a better word, for officers to go out and do exactly what Maxwell was saying, was getting out of the car, meeting people within their beats. And we've got lieutenants assigned to each beat. So yeah, that is in place, but again, we're always open to new ideas.
Well, certainly it's something that will never be finished or done, but
Yeah.
obviously that the core of that thinking is evolving. The other one was, Mayor, were you thinking about something for youth, a diversity group?
No, I mean,
Or
that's a good
someone, is there anyone that's connecting in the collective of students in terms of their view of Marion in this arena?
So
Oh,
That was one of the things I wanted
go ahead.
that I was looking to get involved with as well, was connecting that with the youth. Also, for you, understanding the why and the how, meaning the why behind the stigma of why African Americans feel that it's unsafe to cross these borders, and how do we fix that? How do we go about what's next? Because if there's a situation, and we know in certain rooms, it's like, okay, it's not happening, but they do feel that way. They do feel that they don't want to cross that border. So how do we as a group work on the why and the how, connecting to the why, and coming up with the how we fix it?
So Al, your thought would be to involve youth somehow.
Yeah, I just had some recollection that you perhaps are going to have things with students
Yeah,
along this line of thought.
I do have a youth council.
Oh, okay.
And
That's what you were thinking of.
the city does have some capabilities with survey tools and things like that too that we can use. I mean, if the group wants to do some targeted surveys to the community to get thoughts on one topic or another, we have some capabilities to do things like that. I think we could get them to the students as well.
Colette, you had something?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question about the community survey. So I know the question was, what are some priorities that we have in mind? Would that survey that we are getting back from the community provide us an opportunity to look at priorities from a community's perspective based on our results from that survey?
Yes, certainly. You can take a look at the areas they touch upon and they feel we need to work on to make the community better.
So I would like to see that to help direct some of our priorities as well, depending upon, of course, the number of respondents. But it seems like that might be a place for us to pull some priorities from, if that survey will indeed give us that information.
Yep.
This me as well. When we're doing this community surveys, do we ever have the numbers on how many African Americans are participating?
Yes.
Okay.
There is a breakdown. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
That is a good thought, that we could use the survey as a place to identify priorities.
And that's actually one of my hopes for this group, is that if we can tap into everybody's individual personal networks, that we can increase the breadth and depth of those surveys, get them out to more people, because the more participate, the more reliable that little N becomes. It gets more statistically reliable, the more people that participate. So anything we can do to help push them out when we do them would be great.
Okay. Yes, Jennifer.
I just wanted to make sure there was a point of clarification that I do think that there's two different issues in looking at the governmental components of the how and why, but and what is, how does the police department help create a sense of safety, that everybody feels safe interacting with the police department, but really also looking at how can we work towards the community members of Marion being more welcoming and inclusive. So I just wanted to make sure that, that there's both those things are looked at differently.
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to when I talked about the unique space that kind of the city occupies, and that some of those things are not things that would be directly in our wheelhouse, but we can certainly convene the groups that can have an impact on those.
I was just. I don't
Yes,
know
go
if it's
ahead,
on
Anna.
or not.
It's on.
Okay. I was just gonna allude to that too with the intersections, because there are diverse student groups, like Janessa oversees the Allo group at Linn-Mar. I don't know if there's a complementary component at the Marion Independent Schools. So being able to tap into those student groups that are already created, that are specifically targeting and recruiting those students of color that have, for Janessa's group, they've developed a whole implicit bias to present to teachers and administrators to say, this is an issue for us as a school district. We need to address it head on. It's not just, like, to your point, it's not just one entity that is part of this solution, it's many. So tapping into those leadership groups that are out there and leveraging their knowledge and their input into this, as well as looking at those other intersecting systems, whether they're education, employment, housing, whatever it may be, that are really gonna push forward that inclusiveness that Jennifer was just referencing, that it's gonna take many of us to kind of steer more open mind in our community where some don't see that currently happening.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Any other thoughts?
Okay. Well, if folks don't mind, that was a list of about 9. So if we'll take a crack before the next meeting of maybe narrowing it down to like the top 3 to put out to the group, and see if we can kind of organize them in a logical manner so that we're not, I don't know that anybody likes 7-hour meetings. We want to keep these to about an hour and a half, because after that point, you kind of start to lose people. They start zoning out.
A good starting point. So thank you everyone for that. And certainly if you come up with other ideas and thoughts on priorities, you can send them along to us. And we can share them with the group at the next meeting. Okay. All right, then the final item on the agenda is setting the next meeting date. Is that right, Lon? Before we come up with an actual recurring set date and time, which that's going to happen by a doodle poll or something you're going to send out.
Yeah, we'll poll the members.
Okay. But as far as the very next meeting, what are your thoughts on that, Lon? Then should we just do the same day and time next month, or?
Yeah, I'm looking at next month, and December 10th would be the Thursday meeting, and that's in between city council meetings. And for our boards and commissions, that usually works pretty well, because if there's a recommendation that needs to go to city council, you're kind of in between. So sometimes you can hit that next city council meeting if something, as we start to actually push work products out, the timing works well. Yeah.
We expect that it will be.
Yeah.
Including city council meetings and all other meetings, I assume. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that acceptable to everyone?
10th works for me. Same time.
Thursday, the 10th of December, same time.
Yeah, as long as 4 o'clock works for everybody.
Okay. Then look for the email with the doodle poll to find a time that everyone agrees with on a permanent date and time.
Yeah, if those Thursdays work, we might just
Just
include in the calendar what those dates line up with in like January and February and March, so people can see those dates. And if they work for everybody, we would just stick with that kind of the second Thursday of the month at 4 o'clock.
Great. Anything else before we adjourn? Yes.
I just
Anna.
wanted to check if we're just kind of assuming that it'll be a once a month meeting, depending on where we get to some of those key task groups. Potentially, it may be more frequent in between.
Yep.
Okay.
But as long as you're staying under quorum, the work in the committees can be a lot more nimble.
So for me, right now I'm working remotely from U of I. I don't know what that's going to look like in the spring term for my offices that I work in. For this term, we stayed closed. So, that 4 o'clock time may not work for me sometimes, especially if I'm back on campus and it's a 45-minute drive from here to U of I.
Yep.
So just wanted to throw that out there for myself. So I may need a different time if it's okay with everyone else, but remains to be seen.
Okay, anything else that anyone would like to add or ask before we adjourn? I really appreciate everyone's time and commitment, and I'm encouraged by the spirit of collaboration in this room and with this entire group, and look forward to working with all of you. Okay, have a great weekend, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.